Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wisdom Work with Christa and Christy. I am your host, Christy McCaffrey, here with my co-host, Christa Mantey. Hello, Christa.
Hi, Christy.
How are you?
So good to be here.
So happy to be here too. And we're excited to be recording with each other like 2 weeks after our last episode that we recorded. We were a little late on that one, but we're here today to talk to you about the topic of self-love. As we're rolling into February, we know the conversation is always about love. I believe this time last year, we did a conversation about being heart-centered. So we're trying to stay on theme for the month. But this month and this year, we decided that we want to focus on the topic of self-love. And Christa and I were just talking about the fact that the topic of self-love sometimes can almost make you cringe when you first hear it. Because we've sort of been conditioned to think I'm not supposed to love myself, that seems and feels egotistical, or it feels just like, I don't know that I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. But I think what we want to talk about and normalize is the fact that you are supposed to love yourself and you can have incredible benefits in your life and your life experience from taking a focus inward and having more compassion for yourself and focusing on just loving yourself as you are in every moment and every step along your path. Being able to love yourself to me means showing up in a way where you say to yourself on a daily basis, I appreciate where you are. I appreciate who you are. I appreciate everything you've been through, and I deeply care about you, no matter what you might be holding on to as your own faults or flaws. Actually, self-love is the antidote for those things. Self-love is the most potent ingredient on the path to expansion, which we talk about expansion all the time here on this podcast. And for me personally, self-love has become a focus for the past few months, something that I've really dove heavily into. And I wanted to share with you all the, benefits I've been seeing pop up in my life and my experience because of it. So this all started because I was listening to a podcast. I believe it was the Mind Valley podcast. And now I feel bad because I'm not going to remember who it was that was actually on as the guest, but it was a guy. And the theme of the topic was self-love. But he was talking about how he had this big job and really high pressure job. And he had gotten to this point where he was just like utterly depressed. And he didn't really even know how to get himself out of it. And he was like stuck in his house, like wouldn't leave, was just like in this major low moment in his life. And he said, suddenly this thought came to him, like, what if I just loved myself more? What if I just started practicing telling myself that I love myself? And he's like, I don't even know where the idea came from. The thought, like, I just thought, what do I have to lose? I'm in such a crappy place anyway. So he started bringing in all of these like daily practices and habits of bringing self-love into his life. So like he would look at himself in the mirror for 5 minutes every day and just say, I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. He said, he would sit there and just like quietly in the car say to himself, I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. And what struck me was that he said within a few, I guess, months of doing that, his things in his life started to just like dramatically shift. Like he was speaking to it as it was like this energetic shift in his life. Like opportunities started coming to him and, experiences were just completely different. And he was just living life in this like much more joyful way. And I'm going to link it in the show notes because I feel bad that I don't actually know the name of the episode or the guy that was on it, but I'm going to put it in the show notes so that you guys can access it. But what it did for me was it sparked this idea that, wow, he's right. Like why not try to experiment with the idea of self-love or the practice of self-love and just see what happens, see what shifts. I've always valued this concept of self-love, but I think I've struggled with it along the way for the reasons I was just saying. Like, it feels egotistical, it feels selfish, it feels sort of weird. But anyway, so I decided to dive into the practice anyway. I started doing what he said, look in the mirror and say to myself, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. When I'm in the car, when I have a quiet moment, sometimes in the midst of my chaos, like with work or with the kids, I will start this mantra, I love myself, I love myself. One time I would say that it has helped me tremendously is when I'm feeling really stressed. If I feel really stressed and overwhelmed, I've been saying to myself in that moment, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself. And I'm telling you, it's crazy, but it immediately alleviates the stress and anxiety. Immediately. I don't know what it is or why, but I think it's that you're really bringing yourself back to acknowledging that no matter what is going on around you, you've got yourself. You're like steadying yourself. So I've been practicing it now for a few months, and the major shifts I will say I've seen happen are I'm more clear-minded. I feel much more focused. I feel secure, if that makes sense. I feel secure in a way that I have never, ever felt in my life. It's almost like I feel like for once in my life, I have my own back in this significant way that I never really was able to access. You know, I've always been confident. I've always been believed in myself, but I'm not sure I've always had my own back in the sense that no matter what happens or no matter what anyone else thinks of me, I deeply love and care about myself. I think that that's what's starting to shift for me, is that I'm realizing the power of loving yourself really catapults you into this space of really not focusing or worrying so much about the external circumstances. And you're able to just kind of live in this place of security, of true, authentic security. And it's been a beautiful experience for me so far. And I'm going to keep doing it probably for the rest of my life, because I think it's clear that like only good things come from it. And it's such a simple thing. I'll just say one more thing, but the wild thing that's happening is that I find like if I suddenly have a quiet moment, the thought that comes to my mind first is I love myself. It just has become a habit. So if I'm quiet or, you know, I have a moment alone, I immediately hear, I love myself. And that is like, it makes the hair on my arms stand up. That is the power of mantras and intention. And, you know, it's just a clear example of how we can actually shift our thoughts, you know, and those thoughts that are on a loop in your mind oftentimes can be negative and, you know, self-limiting. But what if we decided to flip what the script was? And instead of hearing like, oh God, you know, you did it again. Here you go again. You're doing this wrong.
Mhm.
What if your thoughts were programmed to the first thing that comes to mind is, I love myself.
Wow.
Like, then you just move on. Like, yeah, cool. All right. We're good. I'm going to keep it moving. Anyway, so that's where I'm at right now, Chris, with the self-love practice. And I just wanted to share that with everybody in hopes that it's motivational or inspiring to you to give it a whirl for yourself and see what that type of experiment might do in your life. But you tell us, Chris, how you're feeling on the topic of self-love.
Well, that's very hard to follow. Oh my gosh, I am so blown away and so inspired. I like cannot wait to start doing this. I'm like in awe, Chris. I'm so happy for you, and I'm so grateful that you've shared this with all of us and that you're seeing all this great. I mean, the fact that when your mind goes silent, you have I love myself come in. That's like that's crazy to think about. So it's so beautiful. So thank you so much for doing that practice and being able to share it with us. And I would love to listen to that podcast. So we'll definitely link that in the show notes. But yeah, for me with the self-love, I mean, it's been a process around, I think for me, a lot of my spiritual or personal growth journey started with wellness because that's my career and professional excitement. So I went into nutrition and wellness and different techniques and holistic ways of healing. And part of that is self-love, self-compassion, making sure you're doing the things you need to love yourself and to take care of yourself. So for me, it was really more of like the taking care of and being a caregiver to myself and making sure the things I know I need are non-negotiable in my schedule. So for me, I think, like you said, Chris, self-love, like just that concept, thinking about it or saying it can be a little overwhelming. And I've talked to clients about this too. I was just telling you, there's like a lot of women I'm working with right now that are very interested in self-love and getting to this point of self-acceptance, which is so beautiful. And I think I think Glennon Doyle said this, but like self-love's a tall order. Start with self-trust. And it's like just keeping these little commitments to yourself. Like, I will go to the gym today, or I will make this food for myself today. I'll sit at the table and eat it, like instead of being distracted while I'm eating. So these little tiny commitments, just keeping them with yourself is developing this trust, which is the foundation of any healthy relationship, right? And John Paul and I were trained in the Gottman Institute with relationships. And for me, when I think about self-love, I go to the love that I know, which is through partner love. And so thinking deeper about what partner love, like what successful partner love looks like, there's a lot of fondness and admiration, and there's a lot of appreciation, and there's a lot of trust, and there's a lot of acceptance for just what is. So I think about that in myself, with my self relationship. And I think about like, how many times am I accepting of what is when I look in the mirror, or when I do something that I'm not proud of? Like, how can I accept it and really be appreciative of the experience, just even though it wasn't something I would wanted to have happened? So, taking these principles with relationship, I really like applying that to myself, because that's something tangible that I kind of know. And being in a partnership we've been together for 16 years. So it's like thinking about how much resiliency we have together as a partnership, and keep coming back to love, and keep coming back to compassion, and keep coming back to appreciation. It's like never ending, right? There's never this end goal of like, okay, we've reached love or we've reached self-love, and it's like, now we're done, unfortunately. So for me, I think deepening the self-awareness. So being aware of what thoughts you're thinking, like the negative self-talk, and then acknowledging the negative self-talk and then challenging it. So that's where I started like years ago, is just noticing how many negative thoughts I have about myself, and then challenging the thought, and then flipping it, like you said, flipping that script and putting a positive one in. So something more affirming. So maybe it's, I'll take the body image example, because that's something I work so much with women and myself. It's like, okay, we look in the mirror, we hate our cellulite. We hate our legs, we hate our bellies, we hate our arms, like, why aren't they stronger? Da, da, da. So it's like all these negative self-talk. So one of the things I'm working with a lot with women and myself is like, well, one, who's telling us to think this? Who's even putting that thought into our minds that we're not exactly the way we should be, right? Then saying, actually, my legs are really strong. I walked all over the earth today. Like, they got me where I needed to go. And my arms picked up my baby and hugged him, and he's getting really heavy. So I'm like really proud of how strong my arms are. So it's just these little things that over time, I think, can really build on each other, so that you're defending yourself against yourself. Really, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but it's like thinking about these, the thoughts are just so pervasive. So just being able to catch them, flip them, and then to start believing them. And that could be like years away, but it's the starting process that we want to try and inspire today, of like, hey, you're worth this. You're worth loving yourself, and yourself is worth loving just as it is. You don't have to be a certain size. You don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to look a certain way. You don't have to be a certain age. Like, you are perfect, whole, and complete, no matter who you are. If you are a human being on this earth, like you are meant to be here for a big reason. So loving yourself unconditionally is ultimately the goal, but start with self-trust or self-awareness and just start to get to know yourself. Like be alone with yourself. This is what I think about with couples. It's or like, a partner relationship, you date. You start to get to know each other in the beginning, right? You're up till 4 a.m. on the phone or emailing or whatever, texting now. So it's like you get to know each other first, then you can fall in love, then you can start to get to that deeper intimacy place. So for me, I think the starting point could be just start to get to know yourself, taking time to go on a date by yourself. Go into nature, get to know who you are, get to know your thoughts, like just be aware without judgment, without shame, and just say like, okay, just take a baseline. Most of my thoughts today were pretty negative. All right, we got a lot of work to do. And, make it fun, keep it light. Don't take yourself too seriously. Like we're all on this path. We're all, struggling moment to moment to flip the script. So it's like, it's important to just keep the pace and keep on the path.
Oh, there's so many gems there and everything you just said. And, I'm going to pull out the acceptance piece and how important
Yeah.
that is, the protecting yourself from your own thoughts. That's a really important one to bring up. And starting with the acceptance, I think that you're right. Acceptance and self-love go hand in hand. That also with getting to know yourself, we tend to project our love outward and think that it's going to make us feel good by doing that. And sometimes it does. I mean, loving the people in your life absolutely enhances your joy and your quality of life. But if all of your love is just outward and never inward, it actually won't serve you very well or to the highest degree that it could. And I know we've heard this a lot nowadays, especially with the conversation of self-love and self-acceptance, about how you really have to love yourself first. And that can kind of sometimes sound cheesy, but it's true. I think that your capacity to love anyone or put any love out into the universe is only as great as your capacity to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that it really starts with loving yourself first, accepting yourself. And accepting yourself, that can be the trickiest part to this process, is really sitting with accepting everything you have been up to this point, which I think we all actually really struggle with the past more than anything, like any mistakes you've made along the way, or anything that you're not proud of. It can be really hard to accept yourself in this moment because you've brought all that with you to this moment. So I think a big part of self-love for me has been accepting myself unconditionally in this moment and choosing to let go of any former self and allowing the present to be just who I am right now. And loving myself for who I am right now, appreciating all that I've been through, appreciating all the ways that I've grown or the challenges that I've overcome. That is an important part of who you are now, but not bringing anything else to the present other than what really is here in the present moment. Being really honest with yourself, accepting yourself. And I really liked how you were saying about protecting yourself from your own thoughts. That is actually a really, really valuable skill to have, to check yourself on a regular basis, to just take stock of what are the things that you say without even thinking to yourself, and as I was saying earlier, that I've been able to see this powerful shift because I was focused so much on, I love myself, I love myself, I love myself, that what happens is it replaced whatever was there before. So now really whatever my thoughts were prior, they're not there anymore. That's actually the most mind-blowing piece to me,
It's awesome. It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. I actually think that this is the largest, most significant thing that's happened on my inner wisdom work journey.
Oh.
It really is. And I didn't even set out for it to be this like monumental thing. I set out for fun and was like, let's experiment. And because the guy was saying like, oh, I attracted all these new opportunities. And I'm like, oh, cool, I'll try it. And, I'm kind of shocked by what I got out of it, was that I actually feel more comfortable with myself than I've ever felt in my life, just
Mm.
by simply switching that thought. And so I just think that, for all of us, it is really important to be intentional about your thoughts, and be intentional, and to know that you have power over them. You do.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
are, our thoughts are not us. We are not our thoughts. They're there. They're just something that's there no matter what. But you do have the power to decide which thoughts stay, or
Mhm.
which thoughts you intentionally bring into your mind and hold on to. And when you choose the positive ones, it can absolutely change the way that your life experience unfolds. And it will change the way your relationships work, your interactions with other people. Because also, when you think about it, if you're lacking self-love, which most of us have been for most of our lives, um, it impacts your relationships with other people, because you're actually needier than you realize. Because you're not giving that love to yourself, you're seeking it in a million other ways, from other people and from other things in your life.
Oh, wow.
We
That just hit home for me big time. I
we
just had to
think
learn this the hard way. Go ahead. I'll say it. Go
no, no,
ahead.
no, that's okay. I was gonna say, we think that something outside of us will give us this ultimate feeling of love and purpose and joy, and it will complete us.
Mm.
But the truth is, it will only get to that place where you feel that way if it begins with loving yourself first.
Whew. Okay, I think I needed this talk more than anybody else. That is amazing and so beneficial. It really validated a big learning that I had just gotten the hard way. And it's so true. It's so true. And it's so hard because it's very not, I don't think we get these models going forward. I think we're kind of where we are right now in this time and space is like the first time people are kind of, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know. But I think it's, for me, I'll just speak for myself. It's the first time I'm trying to get this and really have it deeply shift the way I think about love. Because having expectations of others in our intimate circle, the people that we love the most, it's really hard for them to meet expectations, especially when they're not communicated or if they don't have the capacity. So being able to give ourselves that gift first, it is so refreshing and empowering to know that we can get it from ourselves. We just have to access it. And it gives everybody in our lives free pass to be able to have way more capacity for loving themselves, so that when we come together, it's just bonus. We're just aligned. We're not attached. We don't need each other in this codependent way. It's more of this, I love you, I want you, instead of I love you, I need you.
Woo! Preach! Preach! That was a good one.
That was
That,
good.
that was a good
That was
one. What
good.
you just said.
Oh, you said good
No,
one.
you said it. It's like the validation piece, I think, is how I see it when I hear everything that you just said, that it is something that started to really move for me since I've started this self-love practice, is that I realized I was seeking validation my whole life from
Mhm.
other people in different ways. Like, it used to be my parents, or then it was like my bosses, or, like, I've always been seeking like this validation of like, you're a really hard worker, you're a really good person, and but I didn't realize that I needed that to sustain my happiness.
Mhm.
And then I got to this point where, when I started to shift my perspective with self-love, that I am starting to realize, like, oh, I don't need any of that. I don't need it from anybody else. Oh, I can breathe a sigh of relief. I can breathe such a sigh of relief that
Yeah.
I don't ever have to depend on anything or anyone else in my life to tell me you're good enough. You're
Yes.
you're doing a good job.
Yes.
You are worthy of love. it's really nobody else's fault. I'm not saying, this was just my nature. This is how I was since I was a kid, for as long as I can
Yeah.
remember. But in switching that, I'm now, like you said, it lets everybody else off the hook.
Hmm.
Like, I don't need you to play this role in my life in order for our relationship to work. I am just going to do my own work on loving myself. And just like you said, then we can meet each other and just choose to enjoy each other instead
Mm.
of seeing someone. And I mean anybody in your life, not even just in your romantic relationships, like anybody in your life, being able to say, like, I don't need you to be anything for me. I need you to do whatever you need to do for you because I'm already taking care of myself.
Oh, oh my gosh. Like, how responsible is that? Imagine if the whole world functioned this way.
I hope we're moving in that direction.
I do too.
Now that I realize the benefits, I'm like, whoa, we all need to get on this train
Seriously.
and move in that direction because yeah, I think a lot of like the negative things that are going on in our world right now are because everybody is searching for something outside themselves, for happiness
Yeah.
and joy or control, like thinking that control will give you that sense of love and happiness and peace. But I mean, can any of us say that controlling anything ever in our life gave us that? It doesn't. It doesn't. It's
Yeah, it
never
doesn't.
it might feel good momentarily to feel like you one up somebody or you have a handle on somebody and you're controlling the outcomes of something. But at the end of the day, it's not giving you sustaining peace. It's not
Mhm.
an inner peace. I mean, we always talk about this. That should be our ultimate goal, is to just have peace within ourselves. And the best way to access that is to love yourself and to not look for that inner peace from anything outside of you. You're
Mm.
only going to find it on your own, inside yourself, and by doing the work of being intentional about that.
Wow. Wow. I am blown away. I'm getting a lot from this. So thank
Same,
you.
same. I hope, clearly we hope everybody else listening is getting something too. But Chris
Oh,
and I
it's
have
just
ahas in the process. We're like, oh my God, yes, I needed to hear that.
so true. And it's such good validation around like we have access to all of this. Like that's what I can't ever get over is how vast we are inside on the internal plane. Like we are a treasure chest of different possibilities and endless shifts and just beauty, about abundant beauty. Like it's just amazing to me that I read The Untethered Soul. Have you ever read that?
I've heard of it, but I have not read it.
It's so good. I read it like years ago. I should revisit it because it just came through really clear. And he was talking about this shift in energy around like, imagine yourself where you're like just got laid off and you're in your house, you're kind of feeling depressed and your relationship just ended. Like it feels like the world's kind of caving in and you just have this deep, dark feeling and you're just feeling hopeless. And then suddenly, like the relationship person calls and says, I made this huge mistake. I want to get back together. And can you meet me now? All of a sudden, like the mood shifts, like your energy's back. It's just amazing. Like this, nothing happened except this call. So it's like how much we have this power to shift our energy based on what happens inside of us. So I love that you said how much the protecting your thoughts resonated because one of my meditation teachers years ago said we have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts, maybe more now, like 90,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are the same thoughts. And
That's
it's
so
like
true. That is so
it's
true.
yeah, it's kind of alarming because it's like that's a lot of time thinking about the same stuff, right? So we have what the whole myth around meditation is like meditation is not to silence your thoughts. Meditation is to just come into stillness and be with the thoughts or watch the thoughts as a witness as opposed to being attached to them. Like you said, we're not our thoughts. The same teacher said we have socks just like we have thoughts. It's like we are not our socks, we are not our thoughts. We have them, but we so much we connect and like cling to our thoughts as truth, or like who we really are, which is very false. So meditation allows for that stillness to just kind of be and create the space
Mhm.
between our soul or our spirit and the monkey mind,
Yeah.
the thoughts that just keep jumping. The more information we consume, I imagine our thoughts get faster and faster. So even more so the need for meditation or slowing down, breathing longer. I mean, I work a lot with my clients around just breathing 5 seconds in or 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Like that's how much a human being should be breathing. But we go so fast. So how are we going to do that? It's like 1 to 2 seconds in, 1 to 2 seconds out. So we're just not accessing our full potential from the body standpoint, around like the wellness perspective. So just these little tools can be really hugely shifting internally your plane of like, okay, I'm increasing more oxygen, I'm increasing more stillness in my life so that I can be with myself more. And just like we talked about, be aware of like, who is Christa right now? Like, I haven't really sat with her in a while. What's going on for you? And just, you could journal about it. You could just be aware of the thoughts. I've been using voice memos a lot and just kind of talking to myself. Probably look like an insane person on the beach, just chatting with myself. But I'm like, you know what? It's so important for me to be able to articulate my feelings and thoughts in a cohesive way. I'm also working on my throat chakra and just being able to speak my truth in a
Your
more clear
voice.
way in my voice. Yeah. So utilizing that pathway could be like the path of least resistance for me, um, versus writing. I know you love journaling and you love writing. So whatever works for people, right? So I love speaking. I love, talking. So that for me is just feels more natural. So whenever there's something going on, or even when I'm just by myself, I'll just do a quick little voice memo and say like, hey, Christa, this is what's happening today. This is what's going on, just so you know, and talk about some tools or whatever that has been working. So yeah, I don't know how that came up.
Absolutely. I love the idea that just getting the thoughts out of you in some way allows you to take a like bird's eye view of them. So whether it be like Krista said, like recording yourself to listen back or writing it down, you're right. For me, it's writing it down. And I can't tell you how many times in my life that I've been on a writing journaling journey since I was like pretty young because my mom always encouraged me to do that. And it's not a regular practice, I'll admit. I don't do it every day, but I actually just did it last night for the first time in like a couple weeks. And oh my gosh, the way I felt afterwards was like sometimes it's hard to get yourself to it. Like, oh, I got to sit down with the pen and the paper. I really just want to sit here with a glass of wine. Like,
Mhm.
that actually is the struggle I had last night. And I opted for a glass of tea and sit with my journal.
I had the wine.
Well, I had wine a few nights in a row leading up to that. So I was like, okay, Christy, sit down with the journal and the tea. But afterwards, and this, like, what I was going to say is that this has happened to me so many times over the course of my journaling journey. I'll read back what I wrote and I'm shocked by what I read. Shocked in the sense that, like, I guess I knew those thoughts lived in there, but when you see them on paper, it's like, whoa. So, and shocked in both ways. It could be I'm shocked that I was sad about something I didn't even realize I was like repressing, or shocked in like this confidence that comes out onto this page, or this like certainty, which is what happened last night. Like I was writing about goals and dreams and visions for the future, and also writing about my gratitude for the present. And I was blown away at like, it was kind of this moment where I'm like, what are you worrying about at all in life? Look at how much you've got it figured out here. Not figured out, but like how much certainty you have in
Yeah.
what you have now and what you're pretty certain is ahead of you positively. But it took me writing it down to like let that really marinate and sink in for me. So this conversation makes me think of that concept of like that the self is the watcher,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
that
Yes.
who you are as yourself with a capital S, I've heard it
Mhm.
explained,
Mhm.
um, is actually, it's your soul. It is your truest self watching what's happening in this human life for you. Right. So if you can think of it that way, then you can see that the thoughts, like Christa said, are just like your socks. They're just a part of your human experience. Socks need to go on your feet as part of your human experience. Thoughts need to live in your brain as part of your human experience. But who you are as yourself is actually just watching it all. It's
so
watching
good.
the person put the sock on. It's
Yep.
watching the person battle all these crazy thoughts.
Yes.
And I think that like really helps us to realize that like, you don't need to, you don't need to beat yourself up for your thoughts. B, you do not need to, please don't let your thoughts define you or limit you, right? Because they are just thoughts that can be shifted. And so if we intentionally, I think the process starts with getting clear on what the thoughts are. So whether that be through, journaling or through the audio, but just getting the thoughts out of you, or sitting in meditation quietly so that you can access what the thoughts are. That's the first step of the process, is just getting clear on what the thoughts are. Then deciding, what would I like to replace those thoughts with? What's a more positive thought I can replace it with? And then what you want to do to put it into action is start catching yourself when you pay attention to the thoughts in the middle of your day. If you hear yourself saying something negative or, limiting, say, oh, okay, I got to replace it with this one. I love myself. And I mean, I am encouraging everybody to take this and run with it. Let I love myself be what you do. That's what you switch it out with. Because then immediately you're, like I said, if I'm stressed or I'm anxious and I just say to myself now, like, I love myself, all of a sudden I'm like, oh God, okay, I can breathe again.
Mm.
So it's just a matter of being aware, as Christa said, self-awareness, and then accepting whatever the thoughts are and accepting that they are not you. They do not define you. And then loving yourself as the anecdote, as the salve for whatever was disrupted there.
I am so glad you said the spirit and the soul part around your highest self never being affected by this. You're so right. You're so right. And that's what I mean by perfect, whole, and complete. Sometimes it's hard for us to think about that, but that's the essence of us. The self with a capital S is the perfect, whole, complete one. Yes. So that's within us always. So accessing that or calling upon that part of you to just say, like, guide me, lead me right now.
There's something I want to say before it leaves my mind.
Yes.
So one of my favorite quotes, and who is it? He was interviewed by Oprah, and when he said it, and why do I keep forgetting everybody I want to reference today? But what he said was that true success is when the personality comes to serve the purpose of the soul.
Oh, Gary Zukav.
Gary Zukav.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. Oprah loves
him.
I
knew you would know. I knew you would know.
He wrote Seed of the Soul.
Seed of the Soul, yes.
Yeah.
So what I take from that, and I think why I love that quote so much, is that when we talk about the self, right, being the watcher, you're watching the personality exist in this human experience. And I think what I take from that and what he meant is that true success and meaning and purpose in your life comes when you take that self, that soul, as your guide, and you let your personality start showing up as that. Instead of your personality being all the ways you think society wants you to be, or everybody, put that aside and start paying attention to that higher self, or just trying to get to know that higher self. And then let your personality come to serve that purpose, that soul's purpose. And what he went on to say in that conversation that he had with Oprah was like, then you're like untouchable when you get to that point.
Yeah.
When you get to the point where you're really showing up as your truest self and operating from like this soul-centered place, nobody can mess with you.
Yeah.
Or bring you down, because
you're unshakable.
You're unfuckwithable, as I like. That is also one of my favorite terms.
Yeah.
Unfuckable. Like you
Yeah.
cannot shake it when somebody is so in their core and their essence and operating 100% from who they really know in their heart they're meant to be. Like no one can take that away from you.
Yeah.
And
And
that
it's
is
so inspiring when you see people like that.
and it's the essence of self-love, I think, is
Yeah.
that is taking that journey to really truly connect to who you are, who your soul is, and who you're.
Mm,
I guess it's also like in being of service. Like, how can you be of service with your life, with yourself, your truest self?
mm.
Um, that is an act of self-love, is just taking that journey. I think that
It's
we
yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
you're hitting right on the money because it's like if you can, part of this journey is to get to know that capital S self and harness them and embody them. And then from that point, your service.
Yes. Yes.
So that is like the ultimate hero heroine's journey of like, you know, navigating through this human experience to say like, okay, this matters, but it's not all there is. And then
Yes.
accessing this higher self and then bringing that back into this body, into this experience, and then going forward in relationship or in service to whatever you're going to do. And
Eh,
moment to moment, that's your service. It doesn't
yes.
mean this a big job or a career or, an art form. Like it can be, but it's moment to moment being embodied in love and being embodied in that just that truth of knowing that this is my true nature and I'm sharing that with you in order to access your true nature.
Yes. And to your point earlier that you made about what if we all operated this way? You just think of you're being in service to the entire planet
Mm-hmm.
when you choose to be in service to self and to really bring love forth in the world that way.
Yeah.
Imagine what an enormous impact that would have on the world if we all were more intentional like that. And I'm sitting here thinking, I can't believe that Krista and I come into these conversations and we're like, we're not exactly sure what we're going to talk about. We know that we have a topic and then we run with it. And I'm stopping for a second here to think back. We just had a powerful conversation.
I didn't even realize how much I needed this.
I know.
It really impacted me today. I mean, it always does, especially when I listen back to our conversations because Christy and I, we do a little prayer, if I can share this, before we
Yes.
get on, and we invite our higher selves to speak through us. So we don't feel like this is us. We feel like this is more of the higher, you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to
Universal
be self,
energy moving
universe,
through
God,
us.
whatever you want to call it. If language is tripping you up on receiving the message, like just put in whatever word you say and we agree with you.
Yes.
It's all
Higher
the same.
energy,
Yes, it's all the
universe.
same.
There's definitely an energy of some sort that moves through us in these conversations, because I say to Krista every time when we're done, sometimes I'm like, I don't know where that even came from,
Yes.
but that just came loud and clear to me. Like I needed to deliver whatever that message was. And
Yeah.
I think that should be like a guide point for everybody listening too, is that you have the ability to access some really significant wisdom, which is exactly why we're here to talk about the wisdom work.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to unearth that wisdom and better connect to the source of that wisdom within ourselves. And, all of this work that we're always encouraging everybody to do on your personal growth journey is to just have a clearer connection to that true energy. So I think we can wrap it up at this point, because that was a really, really great conversation.
Oh,
And
I love it.
I hope that everybody that's listening, you feel that you maybe just have a different perspective on the topic of self-love. That's what we were aiming to do, is just normalize self-love, speak to the benefits of bringing a self-love practice into your life. And as always, we want to hear your feedback. We love hearing from you. And Chris, thank you for being here with me today.
Oh, such a pleasure, my dear.
We'll see you next time on Wisdom Work with Christa and Christy.